The words hung in the air, sticky and impossible to ignore. Trade? I echoed, my voice flat, betraying none of the shock twisting in my stomach. Alina's smirk deepened, a dangerous mix of mischief and certainty that made my hoodie suddenly feel like armor I didn't deserve. She pulled back slightly, eyes sparkling like she already knew the answer before I did. Yes, she said softly, almost teasing, almost commanding. You want to know what it's like, really be me. To see the world the way I do. To feel it. Her fingers lingered on my jaw, tracing a line I hadn't noticed before. I swallowed. My heart hammered. I don't, what do you mean? Alina leaned closer again, her breath brushing my ear. I mean you experience everything I feel. The attention, the expectation, the way people look at you differently. The softness, the freedom, the pressure, all of it. You'll know it. All of it. She moved back just enough to study my reaction, and I could see the challenge in her eyes. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't a game. It was an invitation and maybe, somehow, a test. I felt heat crawling up my neck, my hoodie suddenly suffocating. You're serious? I asked, my voice a whisper. Her smile widened, a slow, deliberate curve. Absolutely, she said. But you have to trust me. You have to let go of the version of yourself that you've always carried. Only then will you really know. I stared at her, caught somewhere between disbelief and something deeper, an itch I hadn't known I wanted to scratch. My hoodie felt heavier, the air thicker, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Alina tilted her head, softening. It's not about losing yourself. It's about discovering what you've been hiding all along. And somehow, despite every alarm ringing in my head, I knew. I wanted to. Every breath felt thick, like inhaling through a wet cloth. My body ached in ways I couldn't name. My hips, soft and round, pressed against the floor differently than I remembered. Every shift, every slight movement sent tremors of strange pleasure and panic through me. The weight of my chest, of my belly, was constant, a persistent, intimate reminder that nothing about me was the same. Alina knelt beside me, calm, almost radiant, the very picture of control. You're going to learn, she murmured, voice low, coaxing, yet impossibly firm. It's not just the bump, she said, running a hand along my side. It's every part of you. Your body, your instincts, your whole perspective. I tried to move, to push myself up, but my limbs felt unfamiliar, uncooperative. Even the simplest muscles didn't obey me the same way. My arms, my legs, my hips, they were softer, smoother, pliable in ways that frightened me. I could feel her eyes on me, and suddenly every nerve felt exposed. Look at me, she said gently, cupping my chin. This isn't punishment. It's revelation. You've lived all your life half outside yourself, thinking being a man was the only path. You've been lying to your body, your instincts. Now you get to live the truth fully. I shivered. My voice caught again as I whispered. I don't know if I can. You can, she said, cutting me off with the kind of certainty that made my knees tremble again. You already are. You're not a man. You're mine. My wife, my girl, everything. I said you'd never understand. Even saying the words aloud made me feel smaller, softer. Yet somehow I wanted them, craved them. Every fiber of me wanted to collapse under her touch, under her authority, under the undeniable truth that my body, my instincts, my very essence had shifted beyond recall. She smiled down at me, her hand sliding to rest on the curve of my hip. And now, she whispered, voice low, teasing, dangerous, you'll see what it really means to be me, to live as a woman, as my wife, as my maid. You'll serve, you'll love, you'll grow, and you'll see that there's nothing easier and nothing harder than this. The words sank in. My head spun. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. And through it all, the strange, intoxicating, alien sensation persisted. I was no longer the man who had slouched at the kitchen table. I was something else. Something soft, vulnerable, impossibly alive. Something that belonged to her. Alina didn't move away. She just watched, amused and satisfied, letting me unravel. Her hand found mine, warm and grounding, pressing lightly against the curve of my belly. "Sure," she murmured. "It's okay to feel it. All of it. That heaviness, the tightness, the terror. That's your body talking. And it's real. Every inch of you now is real." I shook, trying to pull away, but my limbs felt like they weren't entirely mine. My hair fell forward, brushing against my softened shoulders, and I realized just how foreign yet intimate every sensation had become. My chest, my belly, even the gentle swell of my hips, it was all mine now, and yet it wasn't. It belonged to this new version of myself she had created. "You're going to need guidance," Alina said softly, voice gentle but firm. "Because your instincts, they're all wrong for this body. You'll stumble, you'll be clumsy, and you'll be vulnerable. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's reality. And you're living it now." I pressed my hands to my face, trying to hide the mixture of sobs and trembles, but the weight of her words pressed down like a soft, suffocating blanket. I felt her hand slide along my arm, warm, authoritative. "You're my wife, my girl, my little miracle of chaos," she said. "And that means every task, every glance, every feeling, every ache, it's part of your new life. You don't get to fight it. You don't get to resist it. You get to feel it, own it, and accept it." The sobs turned to quiet gasps as my mind began to process the enormity of what had happened. Every nerve ending in my body buzzed with a strange combination of fear, awe, and something else. Desire? Anticipation? My hands caressed the curve of my belly automatically, tracing it as though mapping this new territory. I shivered under the weight of my breasts, under the softness of my skin, under the undeniable truth of my existence. Alina leaned closer, whispering into my ear, her breath warm against my hair. "You'll learn what it's like to move, to act, to live as a woman, to be cared for, guided, adored. And yes, sometimes corrected. This is your life now. And trust me, you're going to bloom." I swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I can." "You already are," she said simply, brushing her fingers along the curve of my jaw. "And by tonight, you'll see just how far that goes." Alina's eyes softened as she watched me fumble under the pile of clothes, adjusting the belly band, tugging at the leggings that hugged me like a second skin. "You look real," she murmured, almost to herself. I wanted to argue, to tell her that none of this was me, that I didn't belong in these soft, curving, utterly alien clothes, but even my voice sounded foreign. Higher, melodic, smooth. I could barely recognize it as my own. The tea she made burned slightly against my lips, but the warmth spread through my chest, through the new heaviness in my belly. I drank, trembling, each sip a strange act of surrender. And then, almost imperceptibly, the baby kicked again, a gentle, rolling nudge. I froze. "Mine now," my body whispered. "All of it mine. Not her experiment, not her lesson, mine." That night, when she tucked me in, the world felt impossibly soft around me. The sheets against my skin, the curve of my new hips pressed gently into the mattress, the weight of my breasts on my chest, it all pressed home the reality. She brushed my hair back, her fingers warm and steady against my scalp. "You're handling this better than I thought," she said. There was no mockery in her voice, only a quiet, almost maternal acknowledgement. My boobs hurt," I mumbled, voice small, helpless. It came out like a confession, and for once, there was no armor in me, no facade of masculinity to hide behind. She laughed softly, the sound curling around the edges of the room like a gentle wave. "Eventually," she said, "you'll get used to it. And by then, you might even forget what it was like before." I wanted to argue, to reject it all. I wanted to yell, stomp, assert myself like the person I thought I was. But deep down, somewhere in the pulsing warmth of my belly, the ache in my chest, the softness in my limbs, I felt a flicker of acceptance. It was faint, fragile, but undeniably there. And when the baby moved again, rolling gently inside me like a tiny proof of this new life, I couldn't help but shiver. Marriage, I thought, used to be two people silently agreeing to irritate each other for the rest of their lives. Now, it was something else entirely. Something immersive, demanding, undeniable. And somehow, terrifyingly, it was mine. The next morning, the sunlight slanted across the bedroom and caught the folds of the nightgown. I felt it brush against my thighs as I got up, the fabric light, intimate, and strangely comforting. My feet pressed against the cool floor, unshod, toes curling into the unfamiliar texture of the rug. I wobbled slightly, the center of gravity still foreign, the weight of my chest and belly asserting themselves with every step. Alina was already in the kitchen, humming softly. She glanced up, her eyes sharp but amused. "Good morning, wife," she said casually, stirring a pot of something fragrant. The word struck me again, this time with less shock and more recognition. Wife. It had started to feel less like a label she assigned, and more like a title I carried myself. I moved carefully to the counter, glancing at myself in the hallway mirror. The braid she'd done yesterday had loosened slightly, small strands brushing my cheeks, softening my face. My eyes lingered on my chest, on the curve of my breasts under the fabric, on the bump that made my belly glow in the morning light. I touched it gently, almost instinctively, and a shiver ran through me, not fear, not anger, but an odd, quiet acceptance. "Breakfast?" Alina asked, her tone teasing but tender. I nodded, and as I followed her into the kitchen, barefoot and swaying slightly with each step, I felt the slow, undeniable truth settle in. The little humiliations, the clothing, the new shape of my body, the soft way I moved through the room, all of it was rewriting who I was. She handed me a cup of tea. "You're doing well," she said, watching me carefully. I lifted it to my lips and felt the warmth spread through my chest, through my arms, down to the subtle curve of my belly. I wanted to say something, to assert the old me, but there was no energy left for that. Instead, I sipped, and the soft, tender sensation of the tea, combined with the weight of my body, made me exhale slowly. I realized then that it wasn't just her experiment, or a lesson, or a punishment. It was a transformation I was beginning to live, moment by moment, breath by breath. And somehow, I was starting to belong in it, even if my mind was still catching up. She guided me gently, pressing her body against mine, her hands mapping the new contours of me, my shoulders narrower, my breasts soft and heavy, the swell of my belly beneath them. I froze for a second, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar weight and warmth of my own body and the closeness of hers. Her eyes never wavered. They held me steady, grounded in a strange comfort I had never felt before. "You're mine now, Junie," she murmured, voice low, intimate. The words wrapped around me like silk. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, matching the rhythm of the small life inside me, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe normally. She traced her fingers down my arms, lingering at the small of my back, and I shivered again, not from cold, but from the delicate, dizzying awareness of my transformed body. Her lips brushed my neck, soft, teasing, and then she pulled back just slightly, letting her hands rest lightly on my hips. "You've changed," she whispered, "and I love every inch of it. You don't need to be afraid, Junie. Not of me, not of yourself." I wanted to argue, to say I wasn't ready, to insist that none of this should feel right. But the warmth in her touch, the weight of my body against hers, and the fluttering kicks from the baby made my resistance crumble. I leaned in, pressed my forehead against hers, and let myself melt into her presence. For the first time since the transformation began, I felt something shift inside me, not fear, not guilt, but a raw, fragile trust. And as the water ran over us, mingling with the heat of our bodies, I realized that this closeness, this intimacy, was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what I was becoming. I watched her hands wrap around her own cup, steam curling up between us, and tried to gather my scattered thoughts. The transformation wasn't just physical, it had seeped into my mind, my instincts, my entire way of being. "Your aunt," Alina prompted, tilting her head with that easy, commanding look that made me feel both small and safe. "Yes," I whispered, voice higher than I expected. I told her what happened, about the change." Alina's eyebrows rose, just slightly, like she hadn't expected me to confess. And, she asked, voice soft, patient, but edged with curiosity. She didn't really know what to say, I admitted. She asked if I'm okay, if I wanted to be like this.
And
I don't know. I didn't know how to explain. My fingers fiddled with the edge of the mug, tracing the rim nervously, feeling the warmth seep into my skin like some kind of grounding ritual. Alina leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand, eyes never leaving mine. Junie, she said softly, and the nickname made a shiver run down my spine. You're not supposed to have all the answers. That's the whole point. You're living it, feeling it. Let it happen. I swallowed hard, looking down at my hands, still delicate and feminine, still foreign. My belly shifted as the baby stirred, tiny nudges reminding me that this wasn't just a game, a punishment, or an experiment. It was reality. My body, my mind, and now this life inside me all demanded acknowledgement. Alina smiled gently, reaching over to brush a loose strand of hair from my face. You don't have to figure it all out at once, she whispered. Just be here. Be Junie. Be my wife. Let the world see you like this. You'll learn what that means along the way. I nodded, though my chest felt too full for words. There was fear, yes, but also a strange anticipation. The anticipation of inhabiting this new self fully, of surrendering and discovering what it meant to be Junie, her wife, a woman, and a mother all at once. And somehow, amidst the flutter of nerves and hormones, I realized I didn't want to go back. I froze at the locker room mirror, hand hovering over the zipper like it might bite me. My chest was pushed up and firm, my belly pronounced and soft under the clingy pink fabric. Every curve of me was on display. I could see the outline of my thighs, the swell of my hips, the gentle roundness of my chest, all impossibly feminine, all impossibly real.
Zoe peeked in.
Need help? She asked, voice teasing but not cruel. I swallowed, cheeks burning, and nodded before I could think better of it. She came closer, fingers brushing mine as she grabbed the zipper. My pulse spiked, every nerve firing. Hold still, she said. The fabric stretched over my shoulders, across my chest, and then snapped. The zipper slid up over my back and stopped at the top. I felt every curve, every swell, every intimate detail pressed against the clingy suit. I turned slowly to the mirror. This wasn't just me wearing something tight. This was me becoming something else. Someone fully feminine, fully visible, fully exposed in the most literal way. My belly rounded, my chest high, my hips curved, all of it undeniable. I touched the fabric over my stomach, feeling how the suit cradled me. It was humiliating, yes, but also intoxicating. Zoe clapped softly, breaking the silence. Perfect. You look amazing. And yes, fully maternal chic. She winked, and I wanted to sink into the floor. But I didn't. Somehow, I straightened my shoulders, ran my hands down the sides of the suit, and felt a strange pride in being caught, in being seen, in being a woman fully formed in the mirror. Then the door opened, and I heard Alina's soft voice. Ready for your first shift, Junie? My stomach flipped. Ready? I didn't even know if I wanted to be ready, but I nodded, feeling the suit hug me tighter with every movement, every breath. There was no going back now. The tan lines spread like a map across my body, sharp, defined, impossible to ignore. Every movement reminded me of them. The curve of my hips, the swell of my breasts, the tightness of the suit over my stomach. It wasn't just the visual mark. It was the sensation, too. The estrogen and progesterone microdoses Zoe had mentioned subtly nudged my mood, my appetite, my very perception of myself. I noticed myself reacting differently to parents, to children, even to the way my own body felt. The second week, every small humiliation built on the last. A parent laughed at my overly bubbly, high-pitched greeting, too loud, too cheerful, and I felt the suit tighten across my chest, my heat rising. A child splashed water near my legs, and the wet fabric clung in ways that made me painfully aware of every curve. I stumbled over my words constantly, misplacing the pens and forms, fumbling with the phone, and every time, Zoe's smirk was somewhere nearby, gentle but knowing. Alina checked in midweek. "How's my girl doing?" she asked, brushing a strand of my hair behind my ear. I hesitated, blinking rapidly, trying to push down the flush that had nothing to do with embarrassment and everything to do with the hormonal pull coursing through me. "Fine," I croaked, voice higher, lighter, unfamiliar. She smiled, eyes glinting. "Better than fine, actually. You're learning more about yourself than you think." By the end of the week, my body had changed enough that I caught myself adjusting the suit almost subconsciously, smoothing the fabric over my bump, shifting the straps over my shoulders, feeling the weight and warmth of my breasts. Every crease, every snug contour reminded me that I wasn't who I used to be. The lobby windows reflected sunlight onto my skin, and I saw the stark contrast. Pale areas where the fabric had shielded me, flushed, pink lines where it hadn't. They were a permanent reminder, Zoe had said, but more than that, they were a badge, a mark that I was changing, whether I wanted it or not. By the second week, I realized something terrifying and thrilling. The humiliation, the awkwardness, the complete exposure, it wasn't just a lesson. It was becoming me. And even as I tried to deny it, even as I wanted to be done, a small, shameful part of me started to like it. Alina didn't flinch. She just stayed there, letting me unravel in front of her. Her hands didn't leave my belly, tracing slow circles that made my chest tighten, my nipples peeking through the fabric of the tank, sensitive in ways I hadn't known a body could be. I wanted to squirm, wanted to hide, wanted to demand that this stop, but I couldn't. My body betrayed me with every subtle brush of her fingers, every careful pressure along my spine, along my sides. "You're not a man anymore, Junie," she said softly, almost a whisper, and it wasn't cruel, it was a statement, a truth I couldn't argue with. "You're becoming me, or better, a version of yourself you've never allowed." I shook my head, gripping the couch cushions as my thighs trembled. I don't want this," I murmured, but even as I said it, my voice was sweeter, higher, quivering. My hands wandered to my chest, cupping myself almost involuntarily. Warmth pooled there, radiating down, into my abdomen, into my womb, and the flutter of the baby inside made me gasp. "I know it's overwhelming," she said, her voice soft and firm at the same time. "But denial won't help you. You've been pretending for so long, and now your body, your feelings, everything is telling you the truth." I felt raw, exposed, like a threadbare garment of my old self had been ripped off, revealing skin I didn't recognize but instinctively knew. My nails dug into my palms. My back arched slightly, and I whimpered, ashamed at how much every touch, every caress, made me tremble. My chest rose and fell rapidly, my belly warm and heavy beneath her hands. "See," she murmured, leaning close so her hair brushed mine. "Your body responds. That's not a mistake. That's you. That's who you've always been, and you've been hiding it even from yourself." And there it was. The truth I didn't want to admit. I wasn't resisting anymore, not fully. My mind screamed, my body whispered, and the whisper won. I curled against her, letting my new shape mold into hers, letting my soft hips brush against her knees, letting my breasts press against the curve of her thighs. My tears were hot, bitter, shameful, but also release. "You're still you," she whispered, pressing her forehead to mine. "Just a truer, softer, more vulnerable, more real you." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I only let the sobs come, letting my body, my entirely new body, speak for me. And somewhere between the heat, the trembles, and the tears, I realized I had crossed the point of no return. I wasn't her husband anymore. I wasn't just pregnant. I wasn't just wearing the suit or following her instructions. I was someone else entirely. And even as I hated the way it felt, hated how much my body craved her approval, hated the thrill, hated the vulnerability, I couldn't stop it. I was becoming her Junie. Soft, feminine, exposed. Someone who could cry freely, feel freely, melt and swoon under hands that had once felt familiar, but now made me almost break. I gasped as another flutter hit my belly. The baby, or maybe my body, reminded me again that this wasn't temporary. This was me. This was my life now. But as I scrubbed the counter, I felt her gaze on me, warm but insistent. My hips swayed differently now, round and soft, and I caught myself shifting weight the way she taught me, unconsciously, almost like my body remembered lessons I'd never consciously learned. My hands, once clumsy, moved with a fluidity I couldn't explain, fingers brushing the sponge over the surface with a grace that made my own reflection in the window startling. Alina lingered behind me, hands crossed, watching, not correcting, just observing. "You're learning fast," she murmured. The words were light, but there was authority in them, the kind that made me feel simultaneously exposed and cherished. I wanted to argue, to pull away, to insist that this wasn't who I was, that I was still the person I used to be. But my body betrayed me again. The curve of my hips, the weight of my belly, the softness of my breasts under the apron, all of it felt right. Even the ruffles brushing against my thighs made me aware of my femininity in a way I hadn't anticipated. "See," she said softly, brushing a stray curl behind my ear. "You look natural. Comfortable." I froze, my cheeks flushing. Comfortable? That word felt alien. I shifted the sponge in my hand, glancing at her, unsure if she was teasing or telling the truth. Her eyes softened. "It's okay, Junie. You don't have to fight it. Not with me." I wanted to argue, to protest, to reclaim something of the person I thought I had been. But as my hand traced the gentle swell of my belly, feeling the little movements inside, I realized she had already undone me. Every subtle touch, every tiny command, every whispered compliment had reshaped me. My reflection in the glass didn't just show a pregnant woman, it showed me, or at least the me that had been hiding, waiting, trembling, yearning to be seen. And somewhere deep, I felt that quiet, insistent voice again. "Maybe you don't want it to stop." I swallowed hard, bent over the sink again, and scrubbed, not because I had to, not because she said so, but because the act itself, the rhythm, the softness of my body in the pastel apron, the warmth of Alina's gaze, made me feel like I belonged somewhere entirely new. Somewhere I hadn't known I needed to be. I froze, one hand on the waistband, feeling the new fullness of my hips pressing against the fabric. It was subtle at first, a gentle, almost imperceptible widening, but enough to make me aware that my body was changing even while I slept, while I moved, while I did the simplest chores. I tugged the leggings higher, adjusting the waistband over my bump, and noticed how the fabric clung differently to my thighs and waist, molding to curves that weren't there before. When I looked in the mirror, I couldn't look away. My reflection was familiar, yet alien. Swollen hips, softened waist, a belly that had been stretching for months, now sitting proudly, full and unmistakably maternal. My chest pressed forward in a way that made the nursing tank cling tighter than it had yesterday. Even my arms seemed softer, my shoulders narrower, my whole frame gradually bending into this new, undeniable shape. Alina appeared behind me, her presence calm, commanding, intimate. "Feeling it?" she asked, her voice a soft lilt of amusement and authority. I wanted to deny it, to say it was the clothes, the pregnancy, the uniform, but my hand subconsciously drifted to my hips. "Yeah, I guess," I whispered, voice cracking, disbelief and wonder tangled together. Her hands found mine, guiding them to my sides. "Good," she murmured. "Notice it. Embrace it. You're becoming the woman you've always been inside. You just didn't know how to let it out." And I did notice. Every curve, every swell, every tender ache that reminded me I was no longer just my old self, no longer simply Junie the man, but Junie, fully, wholly, becoming someone new, someone hers, someone herself. I exhaled, and for the first time in weeks, the tension didn't entirely vanish. But it shifted, slid into a new kind of awareness, a strange blend of apprehension and pride. My hips swayed slightly as I took a cautious step back from the mirror, and I caught Alina's smile in the reflection. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. It was soft, knowing, the kind that promised control but also care. And somewhere deep, a tiny part of me, a part one couldn't quite name, thrived on that. But steady, deliberate, intimate in a way that left no room for resistance. Her hands traced my curves with reverence, lingering over the fullness of my hips, the swell of my belly, the soft roundness of my breasts. Every touch made me acutely aware of the transformation I had gone through, the body that now responded in ways I never imagined, that wanted and needed in ways that frightened and thrilled me all at once. I felt myself melting into her, letting go of all remnants of who I was before. My lips met hers, tentative at first, then with urgency, the two of us moving together in sync with a rhythm that felt both new and inevitable. I was aware of every sensation skin on skin, the warmth of her body pressed to mine, the subtle weight of our movements, but more than that, I was aware of how right it felt, how natural, how I had no desire to resist. Afterward, we lay tangled, her head resting against my chest, my hands cradling the curves I was still learning to accept. The exhaustion of the day weighed on me, but there was a strange kind of peace in it, a certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, in this new body, this new life, this new version of myself. And as I drifted to sleep with her fingers tracing lazy patterns over my bump, I realized that the fear I had carried, the fear of losing myself, was giving way to something else entirely. A slow, undeniable recognition that I was becoming someone I didn't yet fully understand, but someone I might just begin to love. And there it was, creeping in quietly, unannounced, a sense that this body, this life, these rhythms was finally mine. Not in the way I had known ownership before, when control was sharp and brittle, when masculinity had been a shield. No, this was softer, pliant, delicate, and yet unshakably real. My hands rested on my belly as I traced the swell beneath my fingers. Tiny kicks answered back, little reminders that life pulsed inside me, and that it had always belonged here, in this version of myself. I looked down at the onesies again, their pastel colors and miniature patterns no longer absurd, no longer foreign. They felt like markers of something sacred, of a world I had stepped into without asking, a world that had demanded surrender, and somehow I had given it willingly, piece by piece. My hair fell over my shoulder, warm against my cheek. My nipples throbbed slightly from the friction of the soft fabric clinging to my chest. Even the ache in my lower back, the heaviness of my hips, the way my legs carried this new weight, felt right. I laughed softly, a sound higher and lilting than I remembered. The laundry room smelled faintly of detergent and warmth, sunlight catching dust motes in lazy arcs. And I realized I wasn't just existing in this body, I was becoming a mother, a woman, someone new. Someone who didn't fight every instinct, who let life curl around her like a silk scarf. And though fear still lingered at the edges, it was quieter now, overshadowed by something that felt like acceptance, maybe even gratitude. I was nesting. I was growing. I was at peace. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't want to go back. And when I said it, really said it, I felt the weight lift in a way I hadn't expected. Not a lifting of the body, no, that was still heavy with curves and warmth and life, but a lifting of the self. My voice, a little trembling, a little unsure, carried across the quiet apartment. Juniper Vale. My name. My body. My life. It all converged in that one soft declaration, and it felt complete. I pressed the phone closer to my chest, the baby kicking lightly as if affirming the words, the life inside echoing them back. A strange peace settled over me, warm and insistent. The apron still smelled faintly of dinner, flour dusting the sleeves like soft snow, and the curve of my belly was a constant reminder that this wasn't a dream or a punishment, it was real. It had always been waiting. Alina appeared from the kitchen, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed but eyes soft. "You sound yourself," she said quietly, almost in awe. I nodded, unsure if I was the me I used to be, or a version I'd never met, but it didn't matter. I was here, I was present, I was Juniper Vale. I lowered the phone, letting the silence stretch between us, full of possibility and strange, tentative joy. Somewhere in the quiet hum of the night, I realized that I wasn't afraid anymore, not of who I had become, not of what I felt, not even of what the future held. I exhaled slowly. My body, my voice, my name, they all belonged to me now. All of me. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. I looked up at her, heart hammering in my chest, the baby kicking faintly beneath my palm. Alina's eyes were steady, warm, unshakable, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could tell her everything without fear. I don't know what to do, I whispered. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, softer, rounder, undeniably me. Part of me wants to go back. But another part, I don't even know who that part is anymore. She tilted her head, a small, knowing smile tugging at her lips. Junie, she said softly, using the name she'd given me. Look at you. Look at this life. Look at yourself. You've lived it. You've felt it. You've become it. And it's beautiful. I traced the curve of my belly again, fingertips lingering over the tiny life stirring inside me. I swallowed hard, tears prickling. I don't know if I want to go back. Her hand found mine, fingers threading through mine like a promise. Then you don't, she said simply. You stay. You live this life fully. You love it. You accept it. That's the choice, and that's enough. You don't have to look back. Not ever. I felt a strange calm settle over me, heavy and grounding. The envelope, with its glittering temptation, felt meaningless now, like it had never existed. My old self, the arguments, the pride, the stubbornness was just a ghost fading in the corner of the room. I nodded, finally, a slow, deliberate motion. I choose me, Juniper Vale, my life, my body, my choices. Alina leaned in and kissed my temple, soft and sure, and I rested my head against her shoulder, listening to the quiet rhythm of our shared life. The letter, the thread of undoing, the uncertainty, all of it burned away in the warmth of this moment. I was Juniper now, and that was more than enough. The fire crackled softly, sending sparks into the dark night sky. I stood there, the cold seeping into my bare feet, the night air brushing against my skin stretched over new curves and a swelling belly. The envelope was gone now, reduced to nothing but ash drifting on the breeze. I felt lighter, somehow. Not because I had erased a choice, but because I had made one my own. For the first time in months, I wasn't being guided, pushed, or tested. I was simply me. Alina came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders, pulling me close. Her warmth pressed against mine, steady, grounding. You're perfect, she whispered, nuzzling the side of my neck. I rested my head against her chest, listening to the steady thrum of her heart. I think I finally understand, I murmured, voice soft but sure. This is who I'm meant to be. Not someone else's idea, not a test, not a trick. Mine. She kissed the top of my head, her hand brushing over the curve of my belly. And I've always known it, she said. I've loved every version of you. But this one is everything I hoped for. I smiled, letting the cold air sting my cheeks, feeling the baby shift beneath my hand, a gentle reminder of the life we were building together. I'm Juniper, I whispered again, more to myself than anyone else. And I'm home. Alina squeezed me, and I knew it wasn't just a name or a body that had changed. It was everything, the life, the love, the acceptance, the peace. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I was Juniper. And it felt like forever.